Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, we're going to read a couple of weird articles, folks. I have an encounter with, a black-eyed man, folks, and we have an encounter with some creatures of the night, folks. But we'll start off with the first article. Black-eyed man in Westminster bookstore leaves owner fearing for his life. Approximately 15 years ago, the owner of an occult bookstore in Westminster, London, encountered a silent stranger whose completely black eyes triggered an immediate and overwhelming physical reaction. The man's unexplained movement behind the checkout counter left the witness fearing for his life and ultimately contributed to his decision to sell the business. So a very drastic encounter, folks, with what could basically be just some guy with basically contact lenses in. That basically spooked this man. Let's read on and see if that's true or not. Hi, Lon. I've been reading your blog recently, and I was drawn to the recollections of people who have experienced encounters with black-eyed people. I decided to contact you with my story. The initial sighting, folks. I used to own an occult bookstore in Westminster, London, about 15 years ago. The checkout counter faced the store entrance. It was around noon, and several customers were checking out. My employee and I were helping them when I noticed a man wearing a light-colored sweater enter the store. He initially appeared normal, but he was looking down in front of him. After walking a few steps toward the bookshelves, he raised his head slightly, and I caught a glimpse on the side of his face. He then turned and looked directly at me, almost as though he knew I had been watching him. We've seen several encounters with indies, folks, that seemingly know when they're being watched, almost as if they're telepathic or have some sort of extrasensory perception, folks. Could this be the case here? Maybe. Let's move on, though. The man's black eyes. His eyes were as black as night. I was shocked, and I could only stare at him. I suddenly felt as though I had been struck by a bolt of electricity. My knees weakened, and my employee noticed what was happening. She grabbed me before I fell to the floor. I told her that it was all right. I said that my blood sugar might have dropped and that I needed to eat something. I turned my back to the store and walked toward a small table behind the checkout counter. With that man still in the room with him, folks, or, in this case, he was walking away from him, but did that mean that this entity, if he looked back, was going to be gone? I, so far, don't really believe so, folks. And we have to ask, folks, is it possible that this entity somehow put the idea that it had black eyes in this man's head that basically made him, think that his eyes were black, or was it just hiding its black eyes from everyone but him? Either way, once more, let's get back to this particular story. The man behind the counter. A moment later, I heard my employee say, "Excuse me, sir." I quickly turned around and saw that the black-eyed man was now standing behind the counter, only a few feet away from me. He stared directly at me without saying a word. I was terrified. I suddenly ran toward the stairs and went up to my office, hoping that he would not follow me. From upstairs, I heard my employee tell him that she would call the police if he did not leave. Now, folks, it would seem to me that this man or entity was trying to intentionally rattle NK here by basically being behind the counter. Well, that seems to have basically been adjacent to some sort of stairs in the building, that it wanted to basically rattle him, maybe to feed on his fear, perhaps, but I can't be for sure. That's just the feeling I get here, folks. Like it wanted him upset to some degree. Very interesting. But let's continue once more with, this particular tale. The aftermath. I remained in the office for several minutes. Eventually, my employee walked halfway up to the stairs to check on me. I asked whether the man had left, and she told me that he was gone. I told her to close the store. It was a terrible experience, and I generally feared for my life. I have not seen any other black-eyed people since then, but the encounter affected me so deeply that I decided to sell the business soon afterward. I cannot fully explain why I made that decision. I simply felt that it was important for me not to remain there any longer. NK. And I have to say, folks, I agree with NK, but then again, we have to ask, could it be that maybe his mind was, played with or basically manipulated in some way by this entity? Firstly, to cause fear in him and distress, maybe to feed on it, as well as maybe make him sell the store, folks. Maybe for some aim him and other entities like him have for this, I guess, plot of land. Perhaps. Either way, folks, a very entertaining story. That makes us think about what's, what is real. But let's move on to the next story. Mysterious vampire couple vanishes from La Dome on the Sunset Strip, and read about this possible encounter with the undead folks. Indeed. Let's read this account and see exactly where it goes, and does it basically present us with, evidence of the undead? Let's read on. During the mid-1980s, a man enjoying drinks at La Dome on the Sunset Strip noticed an extraordinarily elegant couple seated near a fireplace. Their formal clothing, rigid posture, and complete lack of movement were unusual enough, but what happened after the witness briefly looked away left him with a mystery he still cannot explain. Maybe it was an accident here, folks, or maybe these people were trying to prank this man to make him think that they were actual vampires. Because even in the 80s, folks, I think people were dressing in goth, and this could be such a case, folks. Maybe this guy let his imagination run away with him. Either way, let's read on. The initial observation. Hello, Lon. La Dome was a restaurant on the Sunset Strip. Back in the mid-1980s, I was sitting in the lounge enjoying a drink with a friend. Near us, a striking and elegant couple was seated at a small round table. They both appeared European. The woman was a stunning brunette. She had the type of captivating features that could easily get a man into trouble. Her dark red lipstick completed the effect. A timeless, long black evening gown followed the contours of her remarkable figure. She looked like the kind of woman every leading actress from old Hollywood wanted to be. The man was blonde, strong, and classically handsome, with chiseled features. Some men naturally project a commanding presence, and this man, his seemed almost heroic. He wore a black tuxedo with a matching half cape draped over his shoulders. There was a red ribbon near his neck. It may have been part of his shirt and collar, or it could have been the closure that fashioned the cape. Very interesting, folks. But we're not done yet. Their unusual behavior. They were seated in front of a charming fireplace. Above the mantel was a mirror that reflected the low glow of several wall sources around the room. The couple sat opposite one another, separated by a lit candle at the center of the table. Each had a tall glass of red wine. This sounds like something out of just a 80s or 90s horror movie here, folks, with vampires. But that doesn't mean that these men, and I guess man and woman here, folks, were just anything more than just a couple of basically cosplayers here. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there were goth people in the 80s, folks. They didn't basically get real prevalence until the late 1990s. But we can discuss that point later. Let's read on. Their posture was perfect. Their demeanor was stoic. There was something mysterious about them. I did not believe that they were wearing costumes. There were no Halloween parties at the time of the year, and I did not get the impression that they were staging some theatrical display to attract attention. They seemed to be simply presenting themselves as whoever they truly were. So it could be, folks, that maybe this man, he doesn't realize it. Maybe it's some sort of gift to see through some sort of glimmers. He generally believed that he basically was seeing these, two people in their true forms. It could be that maybe they were playing with his mind as soon as they basically stepped into the establishment where he was working. Like he was already under their spell, and these are the impressions that they allowed him to have and remember. Perhaps, folks. I just can't basically be for sure. But let's read on. They sat there and stared at one another. During the entire time they were present, I never saw either of them speak. I never saw them drink from their glasses. Both glasses remained completely full. They did not gesture, neither of them fidgeted or shifted to become more comfortable. They simply did not move at all. That was odd. Now, this sounds like basically this is turning into basically a Men in Black encounter. I mean, they were wearing black, but we have numerous accounts that I've read throughout the years, folks, of Men in Black being at restaurants and simply, ordering food but not eating it. Here we have these two entities having, ordered wine, but they were not partaking of it. Almost as if basically the wine that they had in their hands was more or less an act, or basically a decoy to keep people from asking questions. At least questions that they don't or didn't want people to ask. That's the feeling I get there, folks. Now, once more, let's read on. The vampire remark. I joked to my friend, I don't believe in vampires, but if there were, or are any, we might be seeing 2 of them right now. It sounds silly, but I became eager to see them leave. They would have to stand up, and when they did, they would be directly in front of the mirror above the fireplace. I generally wanted to see whether they had reflections. I began looking toward them more frequently, probably too frequently. I admit that I crossed the boundary of proper social etiquette, but my curiosity had become stronger than my manners. I did not care. I wanted to see them in front of the mirror, and I did not want to miss it. It could be that basically this man somehow projected these feelings into these beings, folks, because maybe it's likewise. These 2 beings could feel something from this man, and in turn, they felt, well, or should I say, NK felt something from them. That could be the case here, folks. But I can't be for sure. It's just something I have to basically wonder about. It could be very interesting, and maybe basically be, well, if you look at such connections, folks, and basically, well, look at the connections that basically that could happen. I'm trying to say here, folks, is that maybe these beings had telepathic powers and stuff like that. So maybe I should just move on from that point and get back to the article. The disappearance. After looking away for only a brief moment, I turned back toward their table. Unbelievably, they were gone. The 2 wine glasses had vanished as well. I was astonished. I would be astonished as well, folks. As I said, it could be that this was all a mistake, that what this witness actually saw, it could have just been, well, him just jumping to conclusions. There's no real evidence that these beings were supernatural creatures of the night. All I can say is that it's something to consider. Now, let's move on to the next, well, part of the article, folks, and finally get done with this story. One could reasonably assume that the matter, D, or should I say the maitre D, escorted them into the dining room and seated them at another table. Perhaps I became distracted, lost track of time, and simply missed their departure. That is the rational explanation. However, I will never truly know what happened. Afterward, I walked through the restaurant to see whether they had been seated at a dining table. I could not find them. KM. Indeed. So, most likely looks like these 2 entities had basically got up, paid their bill, and just left. That's what it looks like to me, folks. But could it be that they did disappear? Were they even real to begin with? Maybe they were just holograms or somehow some sort of, projections from something that basically created, well, created this entire thing. I can't be for sure. I can mean, or should I say, could it be that basically these, well, or should I say this entity was some sort of spirit being? Or maybe somewhere along those lines? I don't know. All I can say, folks, is that if these were some sort of spiritual entities, perhaps maybe demons or, well, something else, I would love to basically ask the actual owner or basically the maitre d's there if they actually saw these entities, and if if these entities matched what basically, well, our friends had seen basically with these entities before. Would he basically been able to do that? Basically the maitre d' or basically any personnel at this restaurant, would they have been able to tell that this entity wasn't human, perhaps? That's why I'm asking it, folks. It makes you wonder if it's possible that it could happen. And that's something that's a bit boring, folks. I may have said that before, but either way, this gives me that vibe here, folks. That maybe if someone could truly understand this or basically look at the data and basically evaluate the intensity of it, they would give them real answers. Either way, folks, we're at the end. So please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics That Are Bad For You. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions or the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that'll give you all future notifications. Okay? I'll see you all again soon.